Thank you so much for everybody who is joining our webinar today. I'm Janelle Henry, and I'm so excited to be hosting this incredible panel. We just started, and so while we're waiting a few more minutes, we'd love everyone who's joining us today live to drop in the chat, tell us where you're calling from, where you're dialing in from, and then I would also love to ask our speakers before I introduce you, if you could give your younger self some HR advice, what would it be? Anyone has any good advice while we're waiting for people to join, let us know.
I was going to make a joke about maybe don't do it, but actually I love this job so much. I love this job so much that I'm like, no, the younger advice I would give myself is like, remember, don't take things too personally.
That's a good one.
Everyone will have opinions on the work that you do because it directly impacts them, but just remember it's not about you sometimes.
I like that. Like learn to compartmentalize early on in your career. I would say, I say this about like, it's sort of agnostic of the industry, but just stay curious, ask a lot of questions, be willing to learn anything and everything, even if it's not like in your job description. Like I always tell people, like, don't be so myopic about what you could possibly do inside of the organization. So if you get called on to do something that maybe isn't like necessarily like HR, look, you got to find the right, I'm assuming that it makes sense, but like find the right reframe as to why it's like an important thing for your career development.
I would say,
great.
I was going to say, I would say, believe in yourself. I feel like my younger self just lacked the self-confidence, questioned my every move. I always needed some sort of reassurance. And when I look back, I'm like, okay, like that did pretty well. So believe in yourself.
That's a great one. For me, when I think about my younger self, and I think about, now, wow, you've asked me to think about this quite a bit this morning, Janelle. So it's taken me down memory lane. But, just for me, three things are really important, whether you're in HR or you're in the business. Having the courage to be who you are and be authentic. Being resilient, because, there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes at you. So how do you get to be really resilient and work through it? And the third is being agile, being the constant learner that someone talked about, being curious. How do you pivot and learn to move quickly, especially in the tech world where we're moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour?
Great. Well, I think we're going to have a really fantastic session. I think we've given a few more minutes for everyone to join. I'm seeing some great attendance. So thank you to everybody who's dropping their name and location in the chat. It's great to see so many people from around the globe joining us. And hello to those of you who will be watching at a later date. Wanted to welcome everybody to this series, which is HR Game Changers. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. It should be a really great time. We run a multi-themed, multi-episode series, and this is our 7th episode. So yay, lucky number 7. I think it's going to be a good one. Today, we're going to be talking about tangible strategies for sustainable business growth, empowering remote and hybrid teams. And I'm sure it's something that this group definitely has some strong and valuable opinions about. If you have peers or colleagues that are interested in joining us for this future series, please share the registration link with them. I will drop it in the chat so you can pass it along to any friends or peers that may want to join us next time. And for those of you who are listening along live, we will have a live Q&A time at the end. So if you think of any questions during this webinar, share those into the chat. So without further ado, let us go ahead and meet our speakers. Can everyone see are we on the speaker slide? It's working. Yay, technology. How about that for remote work? So hello, everyone. I'm Janelle Henry. I'm going to be the moderator today. I am currently at RadAI as VP of People. I've been there for a little over a year. And prior to that, I had a 13-year stint at Meta and a 7-year tour of duty at Microsoft. And so really excited to be joining in the startup world and talking to these amazing women here today. I'm also a GoProfiles customer and just can't say enough great things about them. We use them so much at RadAI to enhance our company culture, to give shout outs. It's just been such a nice way, especially for a company that's fully remote, to feel and stay connected. So that's me. I'm really excited to be here hosting today. And we've got some amazing, amazing leaders who have joined us. So today, for each of the leaders, I would love for you to introduce yourselves, and I have a prompt for you. So I'd love for you to tell the audience what was your first paying job. So think way back. And then what is your most recent paying job? What are you currently doing today? So first, let's hand it over to Sarika.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited for this session. My name is Sarika Lamont. And okay, my first paying job, I think probably my first paying job was working for my dad's company. It was like literally entering data into the computer. It's like,
nice.
Like it's that was probably the first. He used to do it for free, like free child labor. And then at some point, I think I learned enough to be like, okay, let's be serious.
I need a raise, Dad. I need a raise.
Time. I've proven to be a really great intern and a really great employee, probably employee of the year. It's time for a raise. And then my most recent paying job, I am the VP of People and Culture at Vidyard. Vidyard is an AI-enabled video-based go-to-market sales tool. We are based out of Canada, though I am in Northern Virginia. I see a couple of people on here from Northern Virginia also. And so that's where I'm at now. And I've been here for about 2.5 years and very excited to be here. It's very timely. If you've seen my posts, I'm leading the AI automation priority within our company, which is evolving into maybe not just, well, definitely not just AI and automation, but it's been an interesting journey thus far.
Great. Well, welcome. It's great to have you here. Up next, let's hear from Hebba.
Hi, I'm Hebba Youssef. I am the Chief People Officer over at Workweek. My first job was probably also with my dad. I used to help him grade his papers. He was a college professor and he'd be like, grade these with me so we can grade more. So our entire family would sit around a dining room table and do that. That was not paid though. So my first real paying job was folding shirts at Old Navy for $6.25 an hour.
Okay. Now, have you maintained that keen ability to fold an impeccable t-shirt or you've lost it?
No, okay. I'm horrendous at it. Honestly, I don't know why they let me do it. But I was just walk around the store yapping with people, but I did that because I really wanted to buy an iPod and my parents thought it was an absolutely useless thing to buy. So they said, absolutely not. And I said, I'm going to go get a job at the mall. And so I went to the mall and I got a job at Old Navy, and it taught me a lot about customer service, and people are sometimes really mean to you for no reason whatsoever. And you just kind of have to deal with it. So that's how it also helps in HR. My current job is I'm the Chief People Officer at a Series A startup called Workweek. We're a creator-led media company. At the core of everything we do, we help creators build their brands, their audiences, and support them in all the ways that you wouldn't want to do it on your own, potentially with a sales team, a marketing team, all that great stuff. And when I'm not our CPO, I also am one of our content creators. So I started my brand with Workweek, and it's called I Hate It Here. And it's all about workplaces, how to make them better, and to build better workplace cultures for the future.
Definitely follow her. She's got some great content for sure. Well, thank you so much. We're so glad you're here. And up next, let's hand it over to Suni.
Wow, I feel I should have been working for my dad.
Yeah, I know. Jealous.
I miss that much. Well, my first paying job, I used to be a professional jazz singer. So I think I was about 14 probably. And, I sang at an event and it was a paid gig and I was so excited. Oh man, I'm so excited. My last paying job was a Chief People Officer. I've been a Chief People Officer for the last 8 years.
They're so similar, aren't they?
I was trying to draw a parallel, and the one parallel that I could come up with, and it's actually really true, is being comfortable on stage, and being yourself and bringing your whole self, right? Whether it's to stage from a Chief People Officer perspective, we do so much talking to our employees, doing a lot of, keynote speaking, all of that stuff. But it's happened really early for me in my life. So yeah, that's the parallel I can draw. It was fun.
Well, the people in the chat want to know, do you still sing?
Oh man, I've not been monitoring the chat. I don't. I mean, I don't professionally. I do sing. I have a 3-year-old daughter who demands that I sing to her every day. So I'm getting really back into it because of her, to be honest, and I'm loving it. So, I might do something more
Great.
professional soon.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And then last but certainly not least is Halai. Halai, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. And now I feel like not only did I not work for my dad, but I also wasn't sung to as a child, but we can talk about that later. I thought about this. I was like, I feel like I was a little bit of like Ryan Seacrest when I was in high school. I had every job. It was never working for family. I'm first generation American. Everyone was blue collar. We didn't even know bring your daughter to work day, bring your child to work. There was none of that. So I worked in an ice cream shop decorating cakes. I worked at Victoria's Secret. I worked in restaurants. Any job I could do, I would do. But really, when I was thinking about this, what that says about me is just like I said it earlier, like believe in yourself. And I've just been able to like do all these different jobs, and it's fulfilled a need in terms of giving me the money I needed to go to school, pay for school, do the things that I needed to do. But my first like professional paying job, I actually was a journalist. And so coming to where I am today as the COO of a government contracting firm, I made that career transition into HR. I have 15 years of HR experience. And so in every sense of the word, when I think about my first paying job, whether it was in high school and all the odds and ends stuff I did, or to my first professional job to where I am now, it's like be nimble, be agile, all the things that we said we would tell our younger selves. And be curious, like those are things that have kind of led me to where I am today. So as the CEO of a government contracting firm, trying times a little bit, but I oversee a few different functional areas, 15 years of HR experience. We support the federal government from a digital services perspective. So it's a good place to be in terms of modernizing legacy web architecture for public-facing applications within government. And that's where I am today.
Amazing. Well, I'm seeing lots of fun activity in the chat today. It looks like we've got a lot of former theater kids in the audience who have found their way to the stage and now to the HR stage. And then also several shout outs for customer service jobs, right? I think they definitely teach you how to show up, how to please, how people can be upset so often, and how it's our job to calm them down. And also several nods for Roy Rogers, I guess a fast food establishment. So there we go. Roy Rogers getting a little plug today. Well, all right. Well, let's move on to our next slide. So here's what we are going to be covering today. So we've got some really interesting speakers that I'm really excited who are here, and then some great questions, and we're happy to field more during the panel. But we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of HR. How do you transition from these administrative tasks to strategic initiatives within AI, which I know something I'm definitely thinking about? How can you personalize the employee experience? How can AI tailor experiences from hiring to growth? How do we see AI in workforce planning? We just recently got a really great tool at RadAI that I'm excited to share with everybody, talk about, or I'll drop it in the chat, but that's really been helping us kind of understand our headcount budget and what we should be spending versus what we are. How do we think about ethical AI in HR, right? I think that's so incredibly important as we continue to see more and more of it, and what steps should companies take to ensure that our decisions that are driven by AI are fair and biased. And then future trends. What's next? What's everyone excited about? What do we think will change the shape and augment our jobs in the next 5 years using AI? Okay, and then so just a couple more things to share about. I also wanted to call out that there are several ways that AI is already transferring core aspects of HR. As I mentioned, RadAI, my company, is leveraging GoProfiles to build people, culture, and connections. And GoProfiles is actually powered by AI to transform how HR teams and employees manage talent upskilling, performance, and culture building. And so I'm curious, right, panelists, have any of you started to look at tools or take on more, AI as you look across talent, performance management, or remote culture building? Open question.
I can go. I was going to say, I feel like, I've come from a number of different size businesses. Where I am currently, for the first few years that I was here, it was the first year or so, I was just by myself, right, on an island. And I was just trying to, like we normally do in HR, we're drowning. I think all of us kind of come from that world and understand that. But in looking at different AI tools and that sort of thing, what the baseline consensus has been is this redefining operating systems for the organization, figuring out how we can do more. And it's not do more with less, it's do more with more systems, more process, enhancing strategic opportunities for people and eliminating administrative burden. And so I've been, excuse my language in this way, but I've been in tech demo hell, and now I'm in proposal review hell, because the last 2 months for me has been is where can we refine strategy and business process and really optimize outcomes through some tools that also incorporate generative and agentic AI.
Yeah, I think that's great. So we're now into our question and answer portion. So I'd love to kick us off. I've got my notes here. So the first question that I have, and anyone can jump in, how can HR leaders ensure AI adoption enhances their strategy rather than just automates their processes?
It's a good question. I can take a first initial stab at it because I'm, grappling with this now. And I'm guessing this question isn't just about HR adopting AI.
Correct.
Also, how do we enable our organizations to adopt AI and tooling, et cetera? So I think what I actually was funny, I was just on my team meeting, and one of the things I talked about with the team, because they know that I'm leading the company priority around, AI automation. Really, it's about enabling workforce productivity to drive business growth. And whether that's AI or automation or something else more simplistic, that's what we're really what really sort of understanding and figuring out is that it's not, AI isn't going to solve everything, especially if it's going to be layered on top of really bad data inside of your business. Then it's just going to give you bad data insights externally. But I think one of the first things I tell my team is we always want to make sure that whatever we're looking to invest in or however we're leveraging, AI, whether it's tools or whatever, we think about adoption, you always want to anchor that to that talent strategy around that to your business goals. There's so many tools that have come about in the last couple of years, right? Even before OpenAI launched ChatGPT. And it's a little bit, I'm sure, Halai, you're even experiencing this. It's coming out everywhere and everybody's pinging you. I have this amazing AI tool and I have this amazing AI tool and all the tools, but it's that's not really going to be helpful unless I anchor on okay, where's my business going? What are our company priorities? I know what our top 5 company priorities are, and I see what's coming down from that. Where does our talent strategy layer in? What do we contribute to that broader business strategy? And then as we dig into that particular area and I'm looking at those processes, I'm looking at those workflows that are related to that particular business priority, that's where I'm looking is okay, are there opportunities for us to improve the business processes there? Is that through some level of automation? Is that through layering on some type of AI technology or tool? And then who are the people involved in that organization or in those teams that this is going to impact? Because it might not impact everybody. What do they have on their plates? How does their team structure? Are they going to be able to adopt this? How quickly is it going to take for us to implement it? How long will it take for us to enable and get them to an adoption period such that then we are driving business outcomes? Because that's a big question that my CEO and all the leaders are asking me is well, how long is this going to take? And I'm already having leaders say, my team is heads down right now. We have big, lofty, outputs that we have to get to. I don't know that my team has the bandwidth to take on trying to learn a tool. And that's just as important to understand, is where is the appetite for that type of adoption? I also think sometimes there's a need to also understand what your business needs. Because like I said, not everything needs that. Some of it's going to need maybe automation using AI. Some of it might just be augmentation, right? Maybe it's as simple as using Gen AI and figuring out how to prompt those specific things to get the outputs. My team, when we talk about updating our employee handbook and our policies, and I'm hey, why don't we use ChatGPT first? Here's how I suggest using this. I'm trying to teach them in the flow of our work rather than this whole big separate enablement session. Those are just some of the early things that my team and I are talking about and what we're already sort of testing and learning inside of our own organization.
That's great. We did something at RadAI that was pretty helpful both across our talent and our HR organizations recently, which is we mapped out the entire process, right? Where are humans actually interacting with candidates, with employees? And then we tried to strategically identify the places that we shouldn't be doing that, right? That these are the places that you could have AI jump in, or we could, skimp on that. And I had a former manager of mine that always said, you should be efficient with everything except people. And I really like that phrase, but I think that there's work that you have to do underneath it to truly understand, because to your point, the list of vendors that hits you up in your LinkedIn DMs on the daily is so overwhelming around, do you need a tool for this? Do you need a tool that will watch this podcast for you and give you the summary? And if you don't have a strong point of view of what you actually need, you can get really sidetracked, really distracted, and maybe you might choose the wrong tool to invest in when the right tool is something that you hadn't even thought about yet.
I mean, you bring up the right point. Janelle, you bring up a good point, though. It's like understanding what your processes are. I think part of that also, just outside of just mapping out what the process is, it's also like, as you look at like every group, every team is going to have their own set of things like, oh my God, if I could just streamline this, and that, right? So I'm gathering all of that right now. And then we have to look at what's the ROI to the business in any of these areas. Sure. And then like, we have to prioritize our investments now more than ever. We all have like, HR always does, but we have shrinking budgets and everyone doesn't have like unlimited budget. So you really do need to prioritize what and when you're going to invest in and what that ROI is going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the two things that stand out for me from the conversation are figuring out what you need from a business perspective. What is your business strategy? And then thinking through, what does the adoption rate look like in your business if you want to indeed implement AI enhancements? And then you need to take it down to the HR or the people teams. What I love to think about, I love to think about a world where we're going to reimagine the way we do HR. It's not about transforming the way we do HR, because a lot of people talk about, it's going to be transformational. Yes, and how about we reimagine the way we think about the hire to retire cycle, right? Every aspect of the employee journey and experience, what aspects of those experiences can we automate or use AI to make it a better experience? And what aspects of that employee experience do we really need to have the human touch? Mm-hmm. When BCG came up with a recent report that said the most problematic issue with AI adoption is not technology, it's actually people. 70% of the issues we have with AI adoption and technological adoption is people related, right? So thinking through, your employee experience journey within your organization, thinking through what aspects of that need real people touch and a human experience, and then figuring out what can you automate, what can you leverage from a technology perspective, and what can you do that keeps that people touch and that consulting approach, moving the HR function to a service delivery model, to a consulting model, which is about 11% of organizations actually operating in that space, where we treat HR as a consulting firm. But most of the organizations today, from Josh Person's report recently, use HR as a transactional compliance function, right? 39%, almost 40%. So how do we kind of move up that continuum? And I think AI will help us move up that continuum, but then we need to reimagine the work that we do in the HR function.
Yeah, and there's a comment in the chat that I love from Leah, who said, so many folks are rushing to implement AI everywhere without thinking first about what problem they're really trying to solve. Thank you, Leah. Love that comment. As a follow-up question to that, as you think about measuring the strategic impact of AI, are there metrics or measures that you think HR can use to showcase AI's impact on overall business outcomes?
It aligned to metrics, but I was thinking about this as Suni and Sarika were talking. I feel like the biggest thing in taking the business outcomes and the objectives that they're trying to drive is using AI and or just conducting a needs analysis, to Sarika's point earlier, across the business, is really uncovering what the untold story is. Because there are people sitting at a leadership table and an executive team roundtable saying, these are the strategic outcomes that we're trying to drive this year. But quarter over quarter, year over year, when objectives aren't met, there's an element that we're not providing in terms of data and data analysis that helps uncover the untold story, why we're not hitting our kind of objectives and outcomes and KPIs. And so what I would like to touch on is layering on some of that needs analysis, but uncovering what the business objective should be and why we should be prioritizing it, potentially using predictive AI methods, or just kind of getting in deep and asking the right questions. To Sarika's point, it could be as simple as like, what frustrates you? What's working well? You know, if you had a magic tool or a way of doing something or whatever, what would that be? And then that uncovers some of the gap analysis that's needed to get to where we need to be. I feel like that showcases a little bit more of strategic impact as well, not just driving to what's on the table from every other leader in the business, but also using those conversations and maybe some data analysis, potentially with some AI layered on, to say, what is the untold story that'll help continue to drive the business forward or get us to where we need to be?
That's great. I think metrics also matters. There's so many metrics, right? And I also think it's going to be very functionally based. I don't know that there's only one metric that you should be tracking at a macro level. It's also going to be super dependent on what problem you're trying to solve inside of your business. Everyone's trying to solve something different. In sales right now, we're trying to figure out how to, have more productivity amongst our reps, but each rep you have like you have different sides of the house in terms of what they're driving towards. Some might be to like SDR, BDR under sales might be about generating more pipeline. Whereas for, a sales rep, it's probably more about closing more deals. So there's going to be a bit of nuance in what metrics we want to target. Yes, overall, it's like, I want to track, increased employee productivity. That one to me has always been challenging because I'm like, how do you track that? And we've done this with our developer community because they were the first ones to really jump in and dive in and start adopting a lot of these like coding tools, like AI coding tools. And they've been doing their own tracking to see, okay, generally this particular code or task takes us 10 hours a week. And now we know that we've gotten this down to, 6 hours a week. And now we're at about 3 hours a week because as adoption has grown, we've also seen that as adoption has grown, the time it takes to, get this code has also decreased. So again, that's my point, is it's very nuanced depending on what function you're looking at and what problem you're trying to solve. And that's, to me, like that's where productivity gets defined. It's not this like everyone's going to be 5 hours more productive or 20% more productive. How do you figure that out? I don't know. It's just my opinion, my take, what I'm sort of noodling on myself right now. But I'm curious what Suni or Hebba might think.
I have a point of view, Hebba. I'll go quickly and then I'll, make sure that you have some time. I think the main thing for me, as a CHRO has always been, there are functional level metrics that you're going to drive, right? To your point, Sarika. And what does the board really care about? And I remember early on in my CHRO journey, I put together a deck for the board, and the CEO and I had a really good conversation where, we talked about the fact that none of the things that we were measuring, they actually cared about. So, being really, really clear about, as a CHRO, what does your board need and what are they looking to measure, board and executive team? And often their productivity, but then aligning on what those productivity metrics are is always hard. By the way, I'm advising a company right now called Trust Me AI that's developing a productivity, AI productivity tool specifically for engineers and the development organization, which can be taken to other organizations too. So the second was succession. Do you have the right depth in your organization? Yes. And will that create any risk for my business moving forward? And the third was, what are the skills that you will need and currently have for the future that will future-proof your organization? So that then drove us to have a very different conversation with the HR team and the business leaders about the things that we were measuring, right? And now we can have so much enhancement of those two. And when I think about the tool that we're developing from a productivity perspective, where it will eventually lead us to is more efficient and well thought through workforce planning. Because when you can track productivity and everyone agrees on the measures, then you can think about, move to skills-based productivity and then move to workforce planning in the long term. So that's what gets me most excited, because then I won't have to waste all this time figuring out whether my teams are productive or not. And then we can get to the real conversation, which is, okay, if we have defined what these metrics are and they are productive or not, like, can we move some levers there? And then, what do we need to do to train folks and develop folks for the skills that they need for the future? Sorry, that was more than...
That's great.
That was great. No, I would say, like, we are thinking about our AI strategy right now, and we haven't actually anchored on any metrics. We're more looking for, like, what are the actual opportunities that we want to do here, and what is the impact we want on the organization. And our board is also very involved, and they're doing, like, their own AI projects with us, where they're like, we have an idea for, like, how to streamline this thing in the organization, and we think we could use AI to do X, Y, and Z. And so right now, we're not talking about any metrics. We're talking about, like, how do we kind of, like, optimize the business and utilize AI to its, like, best impact at the organization. And I think that changes the conversation a little bit for us internally. We're like, we're not driving to anything key. We're, like, really looking at what are we trying to optimize here? And obviously that will have outcomes in the end where there are metrics we could measure. We're just, like, not there yet as an organization. We're, like, really focused on what is our actual strategy here? What are we doing? Not so much what are we trying to achieve. We're all just, like, trying to piece the story together first before we focus on outcomes. I have found, like, when you start a process or you start a new thing and you only focus on the outcome, it can potentially, like, you just won't be as successful. It's like if you go to the gym with, like, the sole reason of, like, I just want to lose weight, I just feel like that eventually that story just doesn't really resonate. And I think we are really trying to think about, like, how can we change our organization for the future, and less around, like, can we get more productivity out of our employees?
Yeah.
That's, like, not our conversation right now.
Definitely. And if you, Duolingo had a great LinkedIn post this week. If you haven't seen it, I'm putting a plug for our friends over at Duolingo, where their CEO came out and talked about how they're thinking about using AI. And they were very honest. And I think, to your point, Hebba, they don't have all of the measures in place, but they were saying things around AI. We will use AI in hiring. It will be part of what we look for in hiring. We will take a look when we're hiring contractors to see if it can be an AI solve, and not to replace people, but to get more out of them in more of the human ways. And so it's definitely an interesting read, or a good conversation starter for any HR leaders out there who may want to approach the subject with your founder, your CEO, or your leadership team. Use that as a guide and say, what do you think about this? It would be interesting for everyone to at least take a dip in that pool.
Yeah, our CEO sent it to our entire department leads channel. So every single department lead at our company got sent that. And his ask was, like, can you please think about your own department? Yeah. And he's been putting nudges in his, like, weekly emails every week where he asks employees, like, how are you using AI?
Exactly.
So he's just trying to get adoption from, like, a natural perspective. And it's been very interesting seeing how that plays out. But Duolingo, I thought that was very interesting.
Definitely a good read. All right. So a couple more questions here. So the next one is, what are some of the biggest challenges you are all balancing? I think we touched a little bit on this with AI-driven personalization with maintaining a human touch in HR, right? We are a people function. How are you finding ways to balance the AI, the technology, with still truly being about people for people?
I could probably go first here. I think AI, I never view it as it's going to give me a perfect end product. I'm always like, this is a partner and counterpart to me. And right now, where I'm seeing it add the most value is around, like, comms, process, policies, but I always go through and read it as a human. And I think if you are just going to implement it anywhere in your organization and assume the output is going to be exactly on the nose for, like, a human to read it and feel that, like, level of touch and care, I think right now we're not there. I would encourage any of you to, like, challenge me on that if that's true, because I just, like, have not yet seen AI really deliver that human touch yet. So I think that it'll be like a counterpart for HR as it gets something to, like, 90%, and we come do, like, the icing on the cake 10%. And I think also like the flip side of that is that's like very tactical. From a strategic perspective, it's actually taking things off my plate so that I can show up in conversations as a more human HR person.
Yes.
So like that, it's doing my busy work, for lack of a better way of describing it, so that I can put my hat on and actually think like, how are we going to grow this organization? How are we going to best support this person? What should be our policy around this really difficult employee moment? And that I can deliver an actual more human touch to all of our employees.
I'm seeing a lot of head nods, both in real life and in the chat. Does anyone want to add anything to that? Oh, you're on mute.
You think I would learn by now?
I know, right?
It's at least twice a day. The output that I now can get to, like, just even the things of like, I'm putting together employee comms about a change in our performance, or even just our performance process is going to launch. Here's like our whole process. Could you write out a whole time? That would normally have taken me like an hour. It takes me minutes. And then I save things in like project folders, inside of my own ChatGPT instance. And I can go back to those things and evolve my prompts over time. Like even that, and it allows me to have to code and context switch a little less than we do that. I think we do that in general, probably anywhere in the bit, but I think HR does it the most. I haven't always been in HR, so I can say that. Like I come from a different side of the business. And so it is way different being in HR and having to switch so much in a day. If I told you all the different meetings I had today alone and the different topical areas and how much I've also used ChatGPT, my bestie, it's unreal. And that would have taken me honestly, days prior. I don't know, for me, but to Hebba's point, it's allowing me to spend more time discussing what I'm about to launch with managers and with employees versus I only have 10 minutes to talk because I got to go spend an hour writing this comms. Yeah. And so now it's that to me is worth its weight in gold because I've been able to I'm connecting with more employees than I ever have. We're remote first. So it's super hard. And it's I'm building better relationships and more trusting relationships because I get to spend more time with employees than I was able to before. And then even just meeting AI tools, it takes all my notes for me. It gives me my action items. That would take me hours and I would have to do that at night, which means then it's taking time away from me and my family. And that's also just as important to me. It's I'm balancing being a working mom and I want to spend time with my kids. Thank you, ChatGPT. It's my bestie. I say it all the time.
I know. And I want to acknowledge a great comment from Yuli, who said the goal should be to help managers disconnect from tech to truly see their people and spot burnout, disengagement signs. And I feel like we're all just snapping here. Yeah. Thank you, ChatGPT, for sure. Another question on that. I know we kind of talked about in the beginning. How have you all used AI to make workforce planning more proactive rather than reactive? Are there any data sources that you've implemented? Or as a kind of a follow-up question to that, to take it into a different way, how can AI help you navigate sudden talent shortages or shifts in demands or when you have a critical departure? Would love to hear how you guys are utilizing that from maybe more of a people workforce standpoint.
Well, I think, this is going to be the game changer once we get it right. The thing is, it's early now and we haven't got it right. So there's a lot of, let's try this, let's use a couple of tools, let's pull things together. And the way I think about it is, when we had all these SaaS tools in organizations and we had several different ways to do different things, we're going to get to the same point. With AI, we're just going to have a zillion tools, and then we'll get to the point of saying, okay, now we need to make sure that we consolidate and we come to the top two. So we're in that messy phase right now. The way we've been using it in some organizations is around, kind of enhancing your predictive metrics, right? So we've worked on predictive metrics in our organizations in various ways, shapes, and forms. So how do you take the predictive metrics model and enhance that with an AI tool is where we are at today. So that it can help us think about things like, skills and shortages and give us some idea for the future of those, give us some kind of future planning information, because what we have been doing is very reactive to date, right? So with the predictive model approach, layering AI onto that, we want to get to a point where we say, okay, in the next 6 months, we will have a shortage of XYZ engineering talent. And how do we think about where we source that talent from? Is it in the US? Is it global? And how do we get ahead of that now rather than at crunch time 6 months later, when it truly does happen? So I don't think, I mean, in my experience, I haven't seen anyone that's cracked the code on this issue. How I've seen it evolve is using the existing predictive models that the companies have adopted to date, and then figuring out how we can overlay AI into that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I was just going to say, like, I'll give a specific example of that. Some of the things that you were mentioning in terms of using predictive AI to kind of determine future trends and that sort of thing. I myself am grappling with that right now from a succession planning standpoint, right? So when I think about workforce planning and in turn succession planning, I'm like, okay, how can I analyze all this performance data that I have? How can I really truly get in and understand what people's career paths and career trajectories are and use that to identify our high potential folks and what does our pipeline of leaders look like at the organization? That's how I'm using it as an HR professional. And in turn, that information in some way, shape, or form is going to go down to my people. But at the crux of it, what it can then do for you is also say, if I am using this to kind of understand what are our high potential people, what are our gaps and skills and that sort of thing, it also then holds my managers accountable to be like, good data in, good data out, right? So like, it's not just contingent on me reading reviews and giving them feedback and that human touch component. The things that I love to spend time on is coaching managers on how to give effective feedback, but also then in turn using AI to say, run a sentiment analysis for tone and tenor in the review that I wrote. Ultimately, what is this telling my employee? They're doing well, they're not doing well, there are gaps in performance. And so I'm also thinking about not only what is the data that it's telling me, but then what are the discrepancies in our managers and what skills do our managers continuously need to get us the good data that we need to use some of these predictive AI tools.
Halai, it's so interesting. So what we did at Gong, because we have an AI native product for revenue intelligence. That's our product that we sell to the market, and it's hugely successful. So what we did is we took that internally. We wanted to drink our own champagne, right? Rather than have another tool in the system, we used our own tool, which was Gong, to record development conversations and performance conversations with managers.
Oh, nice.
And get intelligence out of those conversations around skill gaps, right? For not only employees, but also for managers, right? To your point, analyzing tone and content of the conversation. So it got managers to focus on the conversation and not worry about writing down things, both managers and employees, which is the crux of what development should be. But it also gave us good data that we could analyze out of those conversations. That could have never happened before because it would be manually inputted, right? So, using our own tools sometimes, we were lucky. We had a really, really great tool, and we, just required a little tweaking from the engineering folks, which they were happy to do. But even something like that can create a skills repository for us, for managers and for employees. And then we can figure out, what are the development opportunities and options available for us as an organization. So some simple things like that can actually be game changing.
Those are, I think, great examples of how you're using it in-house and then how you're also getting a little bit more creative with that. And next question. And so this is thinking in the future, right? Because we can all predict the future, I assume, with this talented, smart group.
Right.
What advancements do you think will have the biggest impact on HR in the next 5 years that are related to AI? Or maybe what do you hope to see? Where would you tell the future developers and creators of these tools or people who are adopting them, where do you hope to see the biggest changes?
Well, I get so excited. Sorry, you go, Hebba.
Oh, no, you go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I get so excited about this only because of the personalization issue, right? It's like, how cool would it be from an employee experience perspective to personalize things for Hebba, for Sarika and for Halai and for you, Janelle. So, how cool would it be for an AI bot to come to you, a super worker or a super AI person to come to you to say, hey, from the information we have about you, and, we can talk about data and privacy and sharing and all those things, right? Once we get all of that sorted, we have a wellness program around XYZ, that could benefit you, whether it's financial literacy or it's, information about whatever life cycle that you're in, right? As an employee, we have an elder care program for you that you could avail of that you didn't know about. So it's hyper personalization for employees that could go to them directly, that didn't need any intervention from anybody in HR. And it could really enhance the employee experience for individuals. And then we could focus on, the conversation, the coaching, all of the stuff that we really need to be focusing on. And the employee gets more out of it, right? Today, people don't know. People don't know what's not available, especially in large organizations. Sorry, Hebba, over to you.
No, I was just noodling on what you said. I was just going to make a joke like, Janelle, I can't give away all my good AI ideas. Like, what if I want to start my own AI?
I know.
Exactly.
Me too,
Investors.
No, but I mean, like, it's so interesting. You said like personalization is everything. I talk about this a lot because we are in this like age of personalization. You open Netflix, it tells you exactly what to watch. I open my Kindle app, it tells me what to read next. Like, it's getting outrageous. One time I opened Instacart and it was like, you're running low on all these things. And I was like, how does it know I'm running low on all of these? Just in that age. And I think employees have come to expect it from everywhere. It's only a matter of time before they roll in and say, why are my benefits not personalized? Why is my learning path not personalized? Why is my coaching plan not personalized? And they're going to look to us as HR to personalize all of that. And candidly, that's impossible because there's not enough hours in the day for me to personalize. I only have 55 to 60 employees. Like, imagine at a global level, you have 2,000, 5,000, 100,000. How can you deliver that really custom touch? And I think that's where we'll see AI tools really become like the go-to. I think my friend Jeet said this. He started a company called Kinfolk. When he joined my podcast, he talked about how like the dream would be that every employee gets their HR person. And it's actually like an AI HR agent that is there to answer questions for them, give them personalized things, like direct them when they have questions. So each employee feels like I am talking to somebody who's just for me. And I think that to me is fascinating, where I could see AI having the most impact in the next few years is really giving that custom touch that so many of us want to give our employees, but actually don't have the time or day to do it.
And like in big companies like Google, my husband's at Google. And when I think about the options available to folks there from a benefits perspective, half the things that are available, employees don't even know about.
They don't even know.
Yeah.
They don't need to know, or they don't even know about, right? So my husband had a need recently, and someone in his organization said, oh, we offer that as a benefit. And he's like, really? Are you kidding me?
I still do that. I'm the head of HR.
Sorry.
Yeah. I think we all do that from time to time. Oh, I didn't know that was a thing here.
So how cool would it be if someone actually contacted an AI bot or a super worker or whatever we're calling these things these days, contacted him in advance and said, here's a life event that is going to happen, and here's how we can help you, and here are the options. I mean, that would be so cool. That is, I get excited about that.
Awesome. I think in the vein of like personalization, but also I think about like where we have like some of the biggest challenges this year, last year. It's still around coaching, feedback, manager enablement, managers knowing how to give that type of feedback, trying to remove as much bias as we can in the feedback that we give. So like we're already seeing this come up in the market, is these like on-demand sort of coaching assistants that are, but really these tools like probably even more like Gen AI type of tooling that sort of sits inside of your HR workflows that are already in existence. So like performance management, like wouldn't be cool if like you're actually documenting from your one-on-ones and you're actually using your IDPs to put your goals in place and you're putting in your feedback that you're giving to your employees or vice versa. And then it automatically takes that and has like predictive ways of like providing you coaching and feedback, both to but give it to the manager. Hey, you should really think about giving Sarika this feedback because this has come up in the last 2 one-on-ones. Follow up with her on X, Y, and Z. Like, just be so great. Because right now it's a lot of HR having to step in and do that. and where we shouldn't be doing that, honestly. Like we should be enabling and building the resources to enable our managers, but we know that our managers aren't always doing it. But I empathize with them. I'm a leader and a manager too. I have so much going on in a given day. It's not that I don't want to give feedback. It's like code switching, right? It's like the cognitive load on everybody is so heavy and so real right now. If there was some sort of an assistant that sat, sort of like inside of the systems or with me when I'm doing one-on-ones, there's a tool out there that's being built right now. I mean, they're building it where it's like the AI bot, I guess, will join your one-on-one conversations and take a bunch of notes and then give the manager feedback on how to give the feedback to the employee. And it's pulling from different tools. I think the integrative nature of the tools being connected. Like what I don't love is what I'm worried about with some of this AI stuff also is everybody's building different AI tools for fit use cases. Yep. And then it's like, now we're getting back to an age of like, we have a different tool for different use cases and there's freaking tools everywhere. And then how do you really manage to that? That's its own beast. And I feel like that happened for a while. We kind of got away from it. I feel like I've gotten really good at like streamlining things, but now I feel like it's like the wild, wild west a little bit. And I'm hearing about tools people are getting across our business all the time. And I'm like, wait, what? Why did you do that?
That's the big issue, right? I mean, like it's like SaaS tools, the day when we all had access to new SaaS tools, we'd all just get everything. And my biggest problem in HR especially is, the tools that are in the market and how do you kind of integrate these? I always talk about the cream of the crap to my team. Each tool is not going to be the best tool, but once we land on something, we need to make sure that we're integrating that so that we can get the best use of our data and our bang for our buck, right? So
yeah. Well, I want to ask this group one last question before we close things out. So this one, we're kind of shifting topics, but you all have been giving such fantastic advice and the chat has really been popping, which has been great to see. So thank you everybody who's been very active on that. The last question I'd love for you to share is if you could give one piece of advice to someone on the call who will listen later on how they can make a meaningful impact on their work in their workplace culture, what would it be? How would you tell people? Doesn't have to be AI related at all, but what is something that people could start doing today to better improve their workplace culture?
I would ask them to ask ChatGPT.
So timely, and love the topical joke.
Sometimes I think it's as simple as just like listening. Really asking the question, spending like one-on-one time. Like if you're in HR, like trying to find time to spend with employees to get their feedback. Like the engagement surveys are one thing, but then doing like stay interviews, we call them coffee and culture conversations. And nice. Try to do them on a quarterly basis and highlight who those folks are that, and at different reasons at different times. And then we have like these different questions, but the questions will evolve based on what's going on in the business. But it's like really listening to where people are feeling challenged, asking very specific questions that are also being like informed by maybe lower scores that we saw in the engagement survey results that we want to improve, or maybe we're putting actions against those. I want to check along the way how they're doing, but it's like listen and then follow up, whether it's on a grander scale, like if you're doing an engagement survey, tell them the results, be honest about them, be honest about what we can and can't prioritize and why. And then give them like updates along the way. Like, hey, this is hey, you know what? We haven't made much progress here, but we made a lot of progress here. And this is directly from your feedback. Like we do that a lot, but I feel like people often forget. And it's also because, if you have like one person that has a piece of feedback that you're not going to like prioritize, they get all mad. But that to me, I feel like tends to make the most difference from what I have seen.
Great.
Yeah. I think even I love what you said right when you started, Sarika. You said just like ask questions, right? And just like get to the core of that. Because for me, this is in life, in the workplace, regardless of what role or level or whatever you sit in, seek to understand first. Like that is my biggest thing, because when I think about managing conflict, when I think about what's going on in the world and what potentially people may be walking into work with, and there may be a performance issue, seek to understand first. If you are not aligned with your managers and or your business executives, like try to see it from their lens, right? Like there's so much of what could be managed in our day-to-day lives and in our professional lives just by putting ourselves in someone else's shoes and just asking the right questions and trying to understand first versus coming in with kind of all this HR speak, HR knowledge, or whatever knowledge you bring to the table. It's just kind of doing some active listening first.
That's great.
I think all of these are really great. And I don't want to belabor these points because I think they're amazing and they would actually add value right away to someone's culture. But the one thing I will add is ask yourself what kind of HR person you want to be. So many of us go through the day-to-day of this job and like can execute performance management systems in our sleep, can do a lot of the things we do so well, but we don't always stop and ask ourselves, like, what type of leader do I want to be? How am I showing up at work? And am I getting the support from either like resources or leadership development that I need to be successful at this job? We have a very high rate of burnout in HR. I think all the studies showed during COVID, we were the people who left the workforce the most. I think there was 1 year during COVID, HR leaders were the ones that changed jobs the most. And I share that because if like this job is like a marathon some days, like we don't see the impacts of the fruits of our labor right away. In fact, we often, the employees don't even realize all the great things we've done until it's probably too late. So I say that to just say, like, you need to take care of yourself as an HR leader and really understand how you show up, because I think that can impact your mental health, your career development, and also how you support your organization.
That's so great, Hebba. I really loved what you said, because it's so true. As HR professionals, we're often on an island, right? And supporting each other is so important. I think Sarika and Halai talked a little bit about culture. So what I'm going to pivot to is, just as an individual, I've always tried to live by the mantra, be nice to people on your way up, because you might meet them on your way down. So treat everyone with respect and treat everyone the way you'd like to be treated. That's so important to me.
Well, I love that. And it's such an interesting observation that we spent the duration of this call talking about AI, but in this kind of most important moment of advice, it was things about humans, about things we learned in kindergarten, right? Be nice, ask questions, take care of people, understand why you're here and what your place is. And so I just think that's such a valuable reminder as we think about the importance of AI, how we can merge it, how we can augment it, how we can shift it to spend more time on the things that we care about, which really are people, and growing and creating amazing spaces for people to work and really thrive in their jobs. So thank you. I'm going to pop the slides back up one more time here. So let's do this. And then just wanted to remind everybody, we have a few more episodes coming up. In June, we have some leaders who will be talking about building compensation models. It's definitely one I'm using AI for, so thank you, ChatGPT. In July, we will talk a little bit about the architects of business strategy and how CHROs are showing up. And then in August, we will be joined by a few folks who will talk to us about branding strategies internally and externally, which should be a really interesting and fun chat. So I want to thank my amazing panel who joined us today. Thank you so much. Thank you to the GoLinks Productivity Suite, and thanks to everybody who joined in on the chat and who will listen. Really appreciated the discussion. I know I learned a tremendous amount today. Was really excited by the discussion and hope everyone has a lovely rest of their week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you. Bye.